Start the recording and welcome everybody. This is so exciting. Yay. We already have quite a few people who have logged in, which is super exciting. And we wanted to take the first few minutes to have the opportunity to sort of get to know who's on the call. I will be introducing our panelists when we get started with the formalities, but just in terms of who I'm seeing here, I mean, I see Liz Nutting, so hey Liz, welcome. Liz is actually the immediate past chair of ILEA Canada, originally was in Toronto, but she's now moved here, so she's one of our local members. Do you want to just take yourself off mute and say a quick hi, Liz?
Everybody, I'm glad to be here.
Thank you for coming. And then next to Liz on my computer is Julia Rooney, who is the current president of ILEA Calgary. Do you want to just take yourself off mute and say hi?
Hi, everyone. Good to see all your faces.
Yeah, great to see you. I'm just going to keep going in order and maybe just invite, when I call your name, just to say hi, you know, who you are, where you're from, and what your business is, and what your industry involvement is. So, hey, Stuart Butler, do you want to say hi?
Hello. Hello from Seattle.
Welcome, welcome from Seattle. Vicki Bryden.
Hi, I'm in White Rock, BC, and I work for Peace Arch Hospital Foundation, and we put on a giant gala every year, which obviously we didn't this year. So I'm really interested to hear what you have to say for 2021.
Awesome, welcome, Vicki. Bouquet, hey!
Hi, everybody. My name is Bouquet Donnelly. I'm the event sales manager at Stanley Park Pavilion. Good to see you, everybody. I miss you all. I wish I could hug and kiss.
Well, welcome, Bouquet. And Joel, please introduce yourself in your role with ILEA and where you're from and all that.
Hey, everybody. It's Joel with SOS, and I'm also chair-elect for ILEA Canada, based out of Calgary. Great to see everybody. Looking forward to hearing what you all have to say tonight.
So, and what's really interesting is I think Tara is going to be joining us too. So between Liz, Tara, and Joel, we have 3 members of ILEA Canada on the call, which is really exciting. And we also have lots of members from ILEA Vancouver and some members who like have been around almost as long, if not longer than I have. So Nick Streicher, good to see you. Welcome. Say, oops, you weren't on mute and now you are, but.
Good evening, everybody.
All right. So, hey, was that Carla saying hello?
It was. How are
Beautiful. You? Hey, good to see you. Welcome, welcome. Carla was also around back in the day when I was the first time around when I was president of this chapter. We're just going around and saying hi to everybody, and I was kind of going in the order that they appear on my screen. I suspect they're different in everybody's screens, but Mike Metcalf.
Hey, everybody. I'm Mike Metcalf. I'm also with SOS, so it's good to see Joel's face on here. It's been so long since I talked to you, buddy. I'm on the ILEA Board of Directors, Director at Large, helping with membership. So it's good to see you guys.
Thanks, Mike. Tahira.
Hey. Hi. Visiting from that other organization.
All organizations are welcome here, and there are quite a few of them.
I know. I'm excited to see what you guys have to say. I've just noticed an interesting shift in the last week and a half of we must meet again to like, why are we meeting again? So I'm curious to see how you guys all roll this out.
And for those who don't know, do you want to share which other organization you're
Oh, yeah, sorry. I'm with SITE, head of events for SITE Global. But long time ILEA member, yes. Off and on. Yes. Since I worked with Carla 100 years ago.
Yeah, that was back when I was president of ILEA Vancouver the first time. Right? Laura Quinn, hey.
Hi, Rachel Quinn.
Hi, Rachel.
Formerly of Cantrav. Yeah, just I've been meaning to come on here for a while, so it's good to see some familiar faces.
Nice, well, welcome. And Stephen, welcome. Please introduce yourself and your role with our industry.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, so Stephen Melville, I'm a sales manager for the Sun Peaks Grand Hotel. Also of the member of the BC Meetings and Events Working Group, president of Fraser Valley Event Planning Association, and I'm just thrilled to be connected with a lot of event profs right now. And I want to give another wave or a special wave to Mr. Stuart Butler from Seattle, curator of the Northwest Event Show. It was just so much fun to go to it this time last year, and so very happy to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, and I'm just loving the collaboration that exists within our industry and how, you know, we're trying to all be on each other's calls and work together. Like, that's the only way we're ever going to get any traction on any of the things that we're trying to achieve. So kudos to everyone for being team players. Thank you so much. Amber, hello, hello.
Hi, Amber, event advocate. Hi.
And you were a member of our board at one point, were you not?
Also, I should say Amber Lieb, CSAP, and previous board member and committee members as well. But yeah.
Great, super. Thanks, Amber, and welcome. Sharon Bonner.
Buddy from snowy Alberta. Snowy here.
Welcome, welcome. I like your backdrop, though. It makes it feel like warm in snow.
Yeah, I'm coming back to Vancouver on the 30th if Dr. Bonnie Henry lets me tomorrow.
Jillian, our president-elect.
Like I got to figure out how to unmute. Hello, everybody. Nice to see so many faces here tonight.
Welcome, welcome. Thanks for being our president-elect. Next, we have Joy Delatina.
I'll unmute myself. Hi, everybody. I'm Joy. I'm actually a program coordinator for Vancouver Community College and in our wedding and event management program. And I also teach in the program. And Bouquet's my prodigy. Yay, hi.
Yay, fabulous. Well, welcome, welcome.
My biggest success story. So I saw her. I have my screen off. I will turn my video off in a bit because I'm trying to work and do this at the same time. But anyway, I'm glad to join in. I'm trying to keep abreast with everything that's going and joining into as many podcasts as I can to find out what's going on in this crazy time with our industry. So good to be here and looking forward to the session. Thank you.
Thanks. Shannon Oaches, if you're able to, there you go. Hi, Shannon.
Hi, how is everyone? I'm from Vancouver. Sorry, you can't see my face. I'm in my terribly lit kitchen. I'm from Vancouver at the minute and I work for Encore Canada. And this is my very first ILEA event.
Well, welcome. We're so glad you could join us. Thanks. You very much for being here. We have a few more. I have 3 minutes to get through the rest of you, and then we're going to move on to our formal programming. So let's make it a quick hello from Phoebe Gurges.
Hi, I'm Phoebe. I work for Loungeworks. I'm one of the project managers for Loungeworks. So just thought I'd pop in and listen in on what's going on and what everybody's thinking 2021 is going to look like.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming, Phoebe. Mark Zanetti, welcome to take yourself off mute and say a quick hi. For those of you webcam down, he's thrilled to be here. Well, thanks. We're thrilled to have you here. Thanks, Mark. Next up is Kevin Molesworth. He was here in February to speak to us in person. You there, Kevin?
Hey, yeah, I'm here.
Yeah,
I'm in
you're
America.
excited to be here, are you?
Yeah, I can't come to Canada. We're locked out, which I totally get. You don't want us. But yeah, I'm the RVP for the Western region in the U.S.
So glad you could join us, Kevin. It's a real honor to have you here. And we're really, this is like truly international call. Tracy Moran, also international. Hey, Tracy.
Hello, I'm from ILEA Columbus over in Ohio. Yeah, so I'm locked out of Canada too. So I thought I'd check in and see what you guys are thinking is going to be forecasting in 2021. So thanks for having us.
Well, it's so great to see you virtually, Tracy. Okay, Gemma says hi. She's having dinner. Robert, are you there, Robert?
Hello, yes. I'm Robert Broughton, sales manager from Rigged Services here in Vancouver. Also just dropping in to keep in touch and see what the future holds.
Fabulous. I also see Michelle McGilvery, who's another past president of ILEA Vancouver. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, all.
So great to have you here.
Those old time faces.
There's a bit of a reunion theme going on, like Carla, you, me, Tahira, some of us.
Feeling a bit disconnected, you know, without being connected with everybody.
Well, but now's a really great opportunity for us to connect. So thanks so much for that. I love the timing on this. It's 5:39. I gave myself till 5:40 to do this. It's now 5:40 on the nose. Is there anyone who hasn't had a chance to say hi who would like to say hi? If not, then, oh, you know what though? Because we were all chatting at the beginning, Claire, Steve, and Redima and I have been on since the beginning, but you guys haven't had a chance to say hi to everybody else. So if you want to just do a quick hi, Claire first. She is our VP of Communications.
Hi everyone, good to see you. Yeah, VP Comms, ILEA Vancouver. Officially, formally Cantrab, unofficially still like Rachel, advocating for Cantrab. Well, we're all in, right? Good to see you.
And Redima, who is a director of programs, and she was really the one who spearheaded this event. Hi, Redima.
Hello, everyone. As Eileen mentioned, I'm currently the director of programs and education with ILEA Vancouver. I was officially with the Vancouver Aquarium and currently doing some contract work with them as of today. So I'm happy to do some work, but always an advocate for Vancouver.
And Steve Matthews, who is on our Programs and Education Committee.
Hey guys, wow, love seeing so many familiar faces here. This is great. I miss every one of you. But good to see you here. I'm hoping we find out what we're expecting over the next while. So hello and welcome. There we go.
All right. So I am now going to get underway with the formal portion of this meeting. So I have begun sharing my screen. I'm hoping that you can all see that. Just so you know, you have the ability to toggle in between gallery view, speaker view, screen view on your top right-hand side so that you get to see us speaking as well as the slides. The slides is really just to introduce some of the concepts and do some of the thank yous as we move towards the panelists. Then when we get to the panelists, of course, it'll just be on us as speakers. But welcome to Forecasting 2021. Who knew? We acknowledge here as the ILEA Vancouver chapter that our chapter is based on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Coast Salish people, which include the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam First Nations. And of course, we offer our respect to all the elders who've gone before us here. And we certainly encourage those of you in whatever chapters you are, wherever you are in the world, to look into the ancestral roots of the people whose land where you are hosting your events, where you are hosting your meetings, and make sure that we work to foster positive relations. So who the heck am I that's been talking for the past 12 minutes? My name is Eileen Bystrisky, CSEP CMC. I, interestingly enough, was chapter president of this chapter in 2000, 2001, so that was 20 years ago. I then became Western Regional Vice President, which is the role that Kevin Molesworth has right now in 2002-03. That was before we had the international affiliate structure. Then we got the affiliate structure. I was chair of ILEA Canada 2010-11, which is 10 years ago. I served on the International Board of Governors from 2014 to 17. Speaking of which, I know Corrine was supposed to be joining us, so hopefully she pops in at some point and I'll be able to introduce you to her in a little bit. And now, lo and behold, with COVID, I am chapter president again. So it's a great honor to A, be the president, and B, have the opportunity to host this particular call this evening. For those of you who know me outside of ILEA, I also love to play outdoors and adventure. And if you're interested in anything related to mountains, exploration, sometimes singing in the mountains, you can follow me on Instagram and YouTube, and there's a whole other world to me there. But we won't go into that right now. So this event would not be possible, or our chapter would not be possible without the generous contributions of many amazing sponsors. And we will be doing everything we can to reach out to these sponsors in the coming months to figure out how we can best move forward, given that, you know, traditionally they would be providing all kinds of things for live meetings, but we're not having those right now. So we still want to recognize them for everything that they've done in the past, and we still want to work on how we can continue to collaborate to move forward, because we will find a way for us all to continue to work together. So we like to recognize our local chapter members, and we will be doing a prize giveaway at the end of this call. So please stick around to the end. You have to be here to win. It's a members only giveaway draw for a pair of tickets to your choice of either Bright Nights in Stanley Park or Festival of Lights. Got to be here to win, and that is for local members. And really the meat of what we're doing here and why you all signed up is to hear about Forecasting 2021. We have an amazing panel of 4 very diverse perspectives of industry experts. But before we dive right into that, I think I want to set the tone by explaining a lot of things that are all, it's really impossible to have a conversation without various elements of various things popping in. So I want to identify what those elements are and create some context around other resources that exist, so we don't feel like we have to address all of it tonight, because we can't. We simply can't. You know, but there is the whole concept of the event industry, which is who we are as a massive, massive collective. There is this global pandemic that's happening that's impacting us all and has medical, you know, consequences that have nothing to do with events. That's like we have to play in that arena to find solutions. We have ILEA, which is the host organization this evening, but we're just one cog in a big industry. You know, we have members of MPI and SITE and, you know, Tourism Vancouver, and there's a whole lot of people that are represented on this call. So how does that all fit in together? And then how do each of those things fit in on an international level, on a Canadian level, and a British Columbian level? So what ILEA Vancouver has done, and thank you, Claire, for putting this work together. If you go to the ILEA Vancouver website, there is a resource that essentially outlines all the things that are available to not only us as members, but what Claire's tried to do is you know, look at what's happening internationally, provincially, Canada-wise, government-wise, health regulation-wise, and what we really encourage is, and I noticed David Tickinen just joined us. So David is the president of MPI BC. How can MPI, ILEA, PCMA, you know, within all, you know, different regions, how can we share and cross-reference these resources so that we're all looking at the same things? We are sharing resources that ILEA International is producing on a global level, which has relevance, but it doesn't necessarily address, you know, what we have to deal with here in BC. So on the international level, just as an FYI, ILEA has formed a partnership internationally with the Live Events Coalition. And essentially that is to try to help play a bigger advocacy role on a global level, which may or may not impact what we're able to do here provincially. But we just need to, one arm needs to know what the other arm's doing so that we can all work in unison. We actually had a meeting hosted by ILEA International this morning that I was a guest on. You know, the themes and topics are very, very similar. So to be aware of what's going on from one group to another group. They actually had Emmanuel André from the MCI group in France do a methodology, a presentation on a methodology on how to safely produce live events. So this is an international methodology, which of course has to then be adapted to your local protocols and your local regulations that we each have to figure out how to do on our own. But just being aware that that exists, and there's links to these resources on our website so that we don't have to go down that rabbit hole right here, right now. Another initiative that I wanted to bring our membership aware of on an international level, not directly related to the pandemic, but we are also tackling the issue around diversity and inclusion at this point in time. And we have a campaign going around saying, I took the pledge. We actually have a written pledge of what we can do as chapter leaders, industry leaders, chapter members, businesses to pledge to move towards increasing diversity, equity, and inclusion within our industry. So that's just something to be aware of and hope to engage in. And those are just 3 levels of the ILEA International that I just wanted to highlight. On the Canadian level, many of you are familiar with Meetings Mean Business Canada, and ILEA Canada is hosting a meeting next Thursday, November 26th, that the Vancouver chapter is supporting. And essentially we will have Clark Grew, who's the chair of Meetings Mean Business Canada, and Tara Sweeney will be facilitating that. And it's just another opportunity to see, you know, how business events can ensure, you know, how we can move forward. On the BC level, we, as mentioned, so Stephen's on the call with us, Stephen Melville, who is on this BC Meetings and Events Industry Working Group. This is a group of volunteers representing a cross-section of different organizations, and they are putting together things on behalf of the industry to advocate to the provincial government. Because this is where provincially Dr. Bonnie Henry and her team can decide what can and can't happen, and we need to find ways to get approval to do what we can safely. So on the BC, the ILEA Vancouver website, which I just wanted to sort of draw your attention to here. So this is the actual COVID-19 page. I just wanted to make our members aware of the fact that there is this View BC Meetings and Events Safe Restart Guidelines here. This is a document that we are not going to go into tonight. So the role that I'm playing right now is just to give you a high-level overview of other resources that exist. So that's not where we go into tonight. But we do want to encourage our members to familiarize themselves with this document. And we have actually had a call with Joanne Miller-Burns, who's sharing this and who essentially reached out to MPI, which David Tikkanen's on this call, and Sean from PCMA and myself. We are actually talking about doing a joint educational session whereby we talk members through this. We're not going to do that tonight, but just knowing that there's resources out there and things that we can dig in some more. The one other thing, though, that we are asking all of our members, once they're familiarized themselves with this document, is to please, please, please endorse this document, because if we can demonstrate to the provincial government that collectively as an association of professionals that we agree to adhere to and abide by guidelines that they deem to be safe, if we can provide that framework and infrastructure to say, listen, we can host events safely because we agree to do these things, it definitely will increase our chances of being able to do more sooner. So that's just a plea for people to look into supporting. All right, phew, that is all I have to cover on that. We are having a prize giveaway social media contest, and for this night's meeting, because we want to encourage you guys to be actively engaged and paying attention, the challenge is to listen for quotes, take notes. So when you hear something that's like a bit of an aha for you, write it down. And then we're encouraging you to do up an Instagram story with tagging at ILEA Vancouver. Also use the hashtag #MyILEA. So ILEA Vancouver will allow Claire to see who's posting. Every post you do, if you do 12, you get 12 entries. Every post you do gets you an entry into the contest. Hashtag #MyILEA, that gets the message out to other people who aren't here tonight so they can see what we're learning and what we're talking about. And then Claire and I will do a draw on Insta Live tomorrow at 1. So you can digest, you can post later tonight, you can post tomorrow morning, but we really want to get this conversation going beyond just the people that are on this call. So that is our prize giveaway social media contest. It is now time for me to introduce the panel. So I'm going to introduce who they are, and then I'm going to turn it over, and essentially Michael, Melanie, Anthony, and Deborah are each going to give their 2-minute highlight perspective from their point of view. And then we are going to open it up for questions and answers in a very, very, what we hope to be a robust conversation. So our esteemed panelists, first of all, Michael Drake from Tourism Vancouver. He is the Director of Sales, Meetings, and Conventions. And he oversees the international and domestic meetings and incentive teams and supports the sports and event festival market. He has 20 years of hospitality sales experience. And when he's not promoting Vancouver, he sounds like a bit of a like-minded person to me. He's out skiing in Whistler, hiking in the local mountains, and finding a scenic running route. After we hear from Michael, he's going to pass it on over to Dr. Let me just move my screen here so you guys can see this. Dr. Melanie Murray. She is the Clinical Associate Professor, Division of Infectious Diseases at the University of British Columbia. She's an infectious disease specialist in HIV care at BC Women's Oak Tree Clinic, infectious disease specialist and staff physician at St. Paul's Hospital. She has a Bachelor of Science, she's a medical doctor, and she has a PhD in microbiology, and she completed an infectious disease fellowship and an internal medicine residency at the University of British Columbia. So while Dr. Melanie Murray might not necessarily be traditionally, one of our members from the event side, I think with this global pandemic that we're facing right now, her insight and perspectives from, what can we expect on the disease side is so valuable and so helpful to us. After Melanie, we're going to hear from Anthony Vade, CED. He is an instigator, creator, and change agent. He's an experienced architect at FMAV and Event Design Collective. And he definitely continues to push experience design boundaries. He's a tech nerd. I think in terms of with the pandemic and with so many people working from home, producing events from home, everything, technology is starting to play a completely different role from what it used to. So I'm super keen to hear what Anthony has to say about technology. And then Anthony's going to pass it over to Deborah Gardner. And Deborah is a meeting and events trends authority and researcher. She is a means business ambassador, And she was polled by Meetings and Conventions magazine as one of the best speakers out there. So I'm really looking forward to hearing you speak, Deborah. But she's very diverse. I love the diversity too of the personalities. We have mountain climbers and runners, and she is a swimming champion, also an author, speaker, and she's a competitive performance expert. She was a groundbreaking leader as one of the first female broadcasters with CBS Sports, and informing the hospitality profession on the future of meetings is her trademark. So I don't know who better to speak to the future of 2021 than Deborah. So now with that, I'm going to turn it over to Michael Drake to start, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen and over to you, Michael.
Hey, good evening. Thank you. And thanks for the invite. It's great to be here. And it's wonderful to see some very familiar faces on the call tonight. But first, I thought I'd start with just an overview of tourism in Vancouver over this past year. Like many, we've been hit. So our budgets now are around 20% of what they used to be. And unfortunately, we did some restructuring this summertime and lost a lot of very talented people. And for example, our meetings and conventions team was 26, and now we're down to 7. Which really puts us in a position in this market to be as productive as possible. So I thought it may be a good idea to show you what we're focusing on, which will give an idea of where we see the demand in the future. So one big goal for Tourism Vancouver is rebuild demand. And we are now looking at a variety of markets. So corporate meetings, corporate incentive, association, sport, but also looking at e-sport and events and festivals. So it's giving me a good idea of the pulse of every single market segment, both locally and globally, so we can come up with some trends for you. But then to rebuild demand is the main thing. And what we've been working on is, number one, keeping all these large citywide clients that we had booked in the city, which was a meeting for about 1,000 or more. We have to keep them back. And we've been moving conferences forward. Right now, the first citywide is expected maybe next summertime, if we're lucky. Next, is just keeping our brand alive. We've been busy doing virtual conferences, sponsorship. We actually sponsored Site Education Day, Tahira there. But really keeping our brand alive. We know people aren't booking right now, but we need our name to continue to be in the marketplace. But we are working on a future pace. With these large citywides, you can never stop actually booking them. And so we're working on bids for 2023 to 2028, which gives us great optimism that those in the medical community, the tech community, they're still planning for future conferences well into the future, which bodes well for us and our careers. But then we're looking at the short term. We're helping out the live event and festival market here in the city, making sure our producers are sustainable well into the future. We can't afford to lose some of these great producers that make amazing annual events. Then fifthly, we can't lose touch of the consumer. And we're working on consumer confidence, doing surveys and getting into a marketing promotion where attendees want to come to events. And that's one area we can't lose focus on. So we'll delve more into it as we get going, but as I will now pass over to Dr. Murray to explain a bit more about her.
Hello, everybody. Nice to be here tonight. So as an infectious disease physician at St. Paul's Hospital and BC Women's, I took on an extra role with the pandemic. So while many people were perfecting their sourdough recipes, I was doing some additional infection prevention and control at BC Women's. And so my life got busier. And I think, we really have learned a lot over the year. We found as a country that it really was the wild, wild west out there. In the spring when we were trying to get personal protective equipment to protect our healthcare providers and even ourselves. You couldn't buy hand sanitizer anywhere, and we were down to a few days worth of masks at some points. But I'm quite impressed actually with Canada in our ability to pivot and adapt, and now the country has become pretty much self-sufficient when it comes to personal protective equipment, which is great because we can protect our staff in the hospitals, but we can also protect individuals on the street. We can protect people at events. We can protect people in the grocery store. And so we've come a long way in that way. Also, the government has been really forward-thinking in penning a number of deals with drug companies to get vaccine. We've bought over 400 million doses, which is about 10 times as many as there are people in the country. to vaccinate our country. And part of that is because we don't know which vaccines are going to work. And so they're hedging their bets. And yes, it's costing money, but it does put us at the front of the line when it comes to vaccines. And really the only way out of the current situation where we are, you know, not where we're meeting on Zoom instead of in person and we're having to cancel all these events, the only way out of all of this is to get to herd immunity. And what herd immunity is when enough people in the population aren't or are immune to the disease that we can shut down the transfer of disease from one person to another. That's probably 70 to 80% of individuals for this virus. We're nowhere near that, right? And so I think that if those who've been listening to the news today, last week, the week before, have heard that Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna have some promising information around their trials being very effective, at least in the short term. And that's exciting because vaccination is the way to go forward. And I think, you know, the government of Canada is hoping to get doses early in the new year and start vaccinating our most likely to become very ill, and our healthcare providers and those people on the front lines, those people in the grocery store and in businesses that are essential first, but then everyone else with a goal of having everyone who wants one vaccinated by the end of 2021. And so, you know, that is really showing me the light at the end of the tunnel, right? We are going to get through this. It is going to go back towards normal, but it's going to be a little while. And I think that it's going to be bumpy for the next number of months as we go through the winter. It's probably going to get a little worse before it gets better. But there is that light at the end of the tunnel. So I'm going to pass it on to Anthony.
And we could all probably go home because Melanie has had her, like she's going to be the one who's going to save us through all of this, and her colleagues around the world and the scientific community. So to then throw to the tech guy, I can certainly look at alleviating some of the pain and some of the symptoms around things, but the answers are going to come from the scientific community. So those of you who know me, and I've missed my BC people so much, so it's so great to be here with all of you. It's I wish I'd been out there a few times in person this year, but this will have to do. So those of you who know me know I live about 50% of my time in the tech world and about 50% of my time in the design world. So we'll start with tech, and obviously we've gone through the largest digital transformation in human history, and it's been forced upon us. So that's been an interesting learning curve for us all. Let's start with platforms. Okay, we'll go with A. The first platform, no, okay. There's been an absolute massive explosion of different solutions coming to market as well. And that's been interesting to navigate in the first few months with all these startups or existing products. And we've been learning each other's languages, how do event industry professionals and event planners talk about their events, and how do tech companies develop their products and solutions. And it's been a rocky road. There's still more products coming out every day, but we're starting to understand each other's methods, I think, anyway, and we're starting to tailor those solutions a bit more. We are seeing some troubling things in the tech sector with some platforms going to market that aren't ready, and already some legal cases coming up, people suing them because the product wasn't ready for market. So I'm a bit nervous that there's more of that coming, and then that brings the big scary specter of data security as well. We haven't had our big virtual event data breach yet, but sadly it is probably pretty inevitable, and I think a lot of 2021 is going to be navigating this new language that we're sharing around technology and understanding each other's development processes. And then we're going to need to get deeper into this privacy and data protection security side of virtual events, because it's a bit of the Wild West at the moment. Then if we look at the design side of things, it's been interesting to see people forced in many cases to invest more time into design and actually starting to adopt real processes around design, which is very exciting for my friends in the Event Design Collective, because we've been suggesting it for years. And what's happened is event planners have finally truly discovered what experience design is. And for those of you who aren't so familiar, we've been talking about it in the events industry, but experience design came out of the thing in your pocket. Understanding how human beings, how our brains interface with technology, and how we experience interacting through technology and the moments that we create around us is what experience design is. So now we've been forced to really adopt the way that the tech industry talks about experience design, and sort of that's starting to elevate the way that we talk about experience design, so it actually means something to us as an industry. It's not just a buzzword anymore. So I'm excited to see where that goes, and as we start to experiment more and start to adopt agile development techniques as well as we go into our second and third rounds of virtual and hybrid experiences. And I'm going to throw to Deborah.
Thank you, Anthony. I actually want your background. I really like there's a lot of changes going on there. So I thought that was really kind of cool. Very entertaining. Thank you all for having me. I'm Arizona based. I have been in the industry for about 30 years and have been pretty much working in many entities. They call me the triple threat because I have the meetings background, the supplier background, and now the speaker background. But one place I would love to go and live definitely would be Vancouver for sure. But someday, definitely. But I know that this has been an unbelievably trying year. It's certainly something very similar to this has not been, our first rodeo. We've been through things like this before, but this one definitely was a beast. It was a different animal, and I pretty much call it, the perfect storm. And it's just been a very interesting experience. And now we're living minute to minute. I call it the now reality. It's a business of reality that we're in because we just don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I think the only major constants in our life right now is that, we have to stay 6 feet apart. We have to wear a mask. We have plenty of toilet paper available, and we're still joining a lot of video conference calls. But I also think the other constant that I think we all have realized is that face-to-face and our industry is a very critical component of making connections and building relationships. And I think we all have a new, renewed appreciation for what we do. And when things get back, it's definitely going to just be amazing for all of us. My husband says I'm in such a kissy huggy industry, and I certainly do miss that. I just want to give you all a hug, no doubt. But what does the events industry look like in the coming year? I'm a very much of a data person. I love statistics. I'm like a sponge when it comes to that. So I stay up to par with the STAR report and many other type of reports that are out there. And I just love it. But the data that we've been getting has really hit us differently now, and mainstream media worldwide is reporting different information. So it's really hard to gather what really is factual and what is not because of the mixed emotions and the opinions that we've been dealing with. But 1 in 10 people work in the hospitality and tourism profession globally. And the global travel and tourism industry, which includes meetings and events, is on course to lose 174 million jobs globally. That's about $2.1 trillion just this year. And while that might be alarming to most of us, the hospitality CEOs are out there. They're joining forces to do whatever they can to get the relief bill passed. Mainly, it's going to probably happen with the new administration in the U.S. In Canada, definitely they're joining forces as well. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens, because what has happened is been devastating for each and every one of us. Canceled events. People have lost 100% of their income, and even 96% of the companies have cut their staff. So even though we're going to come back full force, like Melanie mentioned earlier, we're going to come back differently. And when we're talking about companies cutting staff, we might not be working with the same clients when things do come back. And so it's going to be really different. According to the STAR market performance report, that the latest one that we had in March, which had to do with Canada, showed how hard Canada got hit. Mainly Edmonton, Toronto, and Montreal got hit the most. And then it was Vancouver, which was a minus 81.6%. So Canada has been hit just as hard as the US. And so the future, what that looks for 2021, is still in question overall in many of the segments of the hospitality world. And yet there is a general consensus among the business community both in the US and Canada, that things will start looking better in Q2 for more of a recovery to start to begin. So it's going to take a little bit of time, but then really actually Q3 is where I think we're going to start seeing some differences to the 2019 numbers. So we're going to have to wait a little bit longer there. But what we really want to keep an eye on, both in the US and in Canada, is the construction that is happening. We're keeping an eye on that because that tells us a lot about us moving forward. My husband's in construction and he's busier than ever before. So watching the construction in the events industry is just as important because we need venues. We've got a shortage of venues, but the construction is slow, but it's moving forward. In the US, New York has about 1,700 rooms that are being built right now. Nashville, about 4,800. Miami's got 4,000. Even Detroit has 3,000 rooms being built. Now, just in Vancouver, I'd love to give the report of all of Canada, but just in Vancouver, we're seeing 1,600 new rooms being built with 13 development planned hotels in the Metro Vancouver area. And that is good. And how it's going to be built is interesting because it's going to actually be a massive redevelopment with a hotel, residential units, all in one. And I even see the Vancouver Maritime Museum is actually going to be that's going to be the new home area as well. So you're going to see a lot of different types of construction happening in Vancouver just alone. But according to the Meetings Mean Business, 8 out of 10 people that work from home right now are missing in-person events. They really want to get back out and together. So that's really exciting. I just had David Bruce, who's the executive director of the Independent Meeting Planners Association. He said 83% of people are really missing face-to-face. So the need to achieve business outcomes in person is what will enable our industry to survive in the long run.
Oh, thank you, Deborah. And you certainly did your research before coming to join us here in Vancouver today. Well, I want to thank each and every one of the panelists for bringing a totally different spin perspective, all equally valuable. I'm going to invite everybody to shift over to gallery view. So you have the power in your own Zoom to click over to gallery view away from speaker view. And then what that's going to enable us to do is see at least one panel. So there's 2 panels. I really want to have this be as interactive as possible. I'm inviting you to ask your questions. If I'm not seeing you raise your hand, like just take yourself off mute and ask a question. We have a lot of expertise in the audience. So I also invite you to share your expertise. And if you have insight that you want to share with us, please do so. I mean, I just noticed that, you know, we were doing introductions at the beginning, but since we started, both David Chickenen and Heidi Hughes, who are David is president and Heidi's immediate past president of MPI BC, which, you know, ILEA is super excited about collaborating with. We want to collaborate and work together and share ideas and insights. So I'm going to open the floor right now to questions. You are free to direct a question to a specific panelist or just in general, and let's have a conversation. And I'm also going to be monitoring the chat so that if anybody would rather write their question, that's an option too. But who has a question? Just take yourself off of mute and ask it. And if not, we actually have some questions, but we thought we'd throw it out to you guys first.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
We'll start.
What's that, Carla?
I have a question for Michael Drake.
Yes, please.
Right.
Hi, Michael. I know you guys are working so hard at Tours of Vancouver, so thank you for everything that you're doing to hold the fort as you guys rebuild under the new CEO of Royce. So I have faith. How is Tours of Vancouver working with, you know, YVR, the provincial and federal marketing organizations on our renewal? So as opposed, I don't want to use the word recovery. It's like, you know, what are you doing at least in 2021 around that?
There's the advocacy piece is one side of it, which is the Meetings Mean Business side. However, you know, we're focused more on future demand. So with Air Canada, it's what type of marketing campaigns and looking at who our consumer is. And we know it's really going to be BC for now. So in BC, we're partnering with DBC to make sure that we're getting messaging out and trying to draw people back into cities and to return to meetings or live events. When it comes to Destination Canada, it's the same. They've usually been an external promoter, internationally. So now they're looking domestically. So we need to partner with them so that our messaging isn't overlapping. And we're certainly seeing more alignment with other regional DMOs. We're working with Tourism Whistler, Tourism Richmond, Tourism Victoria. And particularly in this market segment, we don't want to be tripping over each other as we both go after the same consumer. We're probably more aligned than we ever have been before.
Thanks, Michael. Anyone else have anything to add to that before we
yes,
move on?
I've got a question. This question's for the good doctor, Melanie, that two-parter, I guess, is when do you think that vaccines will actually start to be rolled out? When will we see an inoculation program start? And then at what point do you think it will be safe for people to travel and meet again in large venues?
So I've been watching the vaccine reports quite closely, and it looks like the Canadian military has actually been brought in to do the planning for vaccine distribution. And the hope is there's 2 vaccines where there will be final results by December. So Pfizer has just put theirs out, and Moderna is expected in the next few weeks to put out their finals. And they will be going to Health Canada to look for approval to give those vaccines out to people in Canada at that point. We will then get, I think it's 4 million doses from Pfizer and 2 million doses from Moderna in the first quarter. And those doses would go to those high-risk individuals first. There's a framework for that. And then filtering down to the rest of Canadians with a plan to have everyone vaccinated, providing we have effective vaccines, which is looking promising, by the end of the year. There are dozens more vaccine candidates coming. What we don't know yet is how long that immunity is going to last. And so that's yet to be seen. Are we going to need to reboost people in 6 months or a year? And if we do, that will affect how many doses we have, how far that goes. Right. As far as when we'll be able to open back up, I think that once we get our high-risk populations vaccinated, probably kind of looking midway through the year, then when numbers start to fall and hospitalizations and deaths start to really fall, I think things will start to open up more, and that we'll be able to have some events, but probably still there'll be some masking, there'll still be distancing, or events where people stay kind of within their bubbles, right, for the most part. With a look towards the end of the year, if we can get a majority of the population vaccinated, a year from now, I think we'll be looking for a much better Christmas next year than this one.
Thanks, Melanie. Gemma, you had a question for Michael. Do you want to ask it to the call?
Sure. I know a little while ago, a few months ago, I think it was, there was talk of, there was a proposal to the BC government about a fund. I have a feeling it was 163 million, but don't quote me. I'm just wondering if you know if that's been approved, and if so, what are the mechanisms for the distribution of that fund? Is there an application process, etc.? Thank you.
There's been a couple of different fundings. So one, I'll elaborate a bit, is one has gone through Destination Canada, and then they've given funds to the provincial, which is Destination BC, and then Destination BC gave it equally out to all of the DMOs throughout British Columbia. And the other applications are more from a company owner to apply for loans and offsetting other costs. But on the event side, though, I did want just to make sure everyone's aware of different event funding. So apart from federally, I do remember that the City of Vancouver still has a grant program. Creative BC and Music BC also have a program that you can get funding for. There's the Western Diversification Economic Fund, which you can apply to. I know some people have been applying for that. There's still federal grants. Tourism Vancouver may next year come out with a program. And the Vancouver Hotel Destination Association also, if you're impacting hotels, has grants and funding available. So if you're ever curious, if your event or program that you're working on or client can apply for funding, reach out to me and I can help guide you into the right direction. I call it finding the money these days. Who has funding available and how can you get it?
Thanks, Michael, much appreciated. Shannon Oches, did you have your hand up there?
I did. Don't mind the terrible screen. I guess it's a joint question for Michael and Anthony. As we've had this sudden and forced transition, thanks. And we've all had to adjust to digital. I know lots of our clients maybe don't enjoy that, but they are learning to take the training wheels off eventually. And as we perceive that this is going to happen for the next 6 months, most likely, if not longer, and they'll become more comfortable with that. Do you, Michael, perceive that there will be a decrease in tourism and convention center bookings because we will be able to do hybrid meetings, which will mean that people from multiple places won't have to travel. It won't be a greater ease on their time. It might be more cost effective for the people like MPI.
I think that it is going to impact it, and pretty much everything is going to be going hybrid for sure. And it'll depend on, I think, the business purpose of the meeting. For those that really need to network, if there's a business purpose to the meeting, then a meeting in person is going to help you close a deal. Those types of conferences are going to do better. They certainly have reduced numbers, but will be higher. If it's more of just a content and learning, then those would certainly be at risk. But it is, someone said, no, the destination is going to be more important than ever. You could go to a conference, and so that deciding factor might be, hey, I would really like to go to Vancouver. It has lots of outdoor spaces, which is great for COVID. So perhaps, that's the place I'll go. But when you look at other market segments, the corporate incentive market, they think people are going to want corporate incentive as a reward more than ever. So corporate incentive could be a strong market going forward. You look at sport, I think people are going to come back out to sporting events and festivals. Jeff Robbins is from Live Nation, which is on our board, and he's saying, people want to go back to concerts. I think it's going to depend on the type of event and the risk and whether you're going to travel for yourself or for business.
Really?
Melanie, can you share what you wrote in the chat? Because I think what's so exciting for me is, as the doctor on the call, you've just hit on what's so important for all of us. But can you just share it for those who didn't read it?
I'm sorry. So I just said that part of the joy of going to a conference is the destination. So going somewhere I'd like to travel anyway, and seeing colleagues who live elsewhere. So there are people I've trained with who I never see unless I go to a conference. So for instance, I did Infectious Disease Week in October, and it was all virtual, watching Zoom calls, but all those people I would have had supper with or lunch with, that doesn't happen. And so that's a reason to go. And so I totally agree that I see medical conferences, at least, as being a hybrid. Some people will call in and do the Zoom calls just because it saves money and it's more time, it's better time-wise, but there's two very good reasons why you'd want to go and travel somewhere.
Just to tag on Michael and what Melanie was saying, there was a research done by a facility management company in the UK called Sodexo. They had about 4,000 people that they actually researched who have attended at least one sports event, a conference or a convention or a personal event, or visited a culture venue in the past 12 months. And they asked, in which country, do you think consumers who have participated in those in the past 6 months or the past 12 months, would they go back? And the 4 countries that they researched was the UK, France, Spain, and the US. Of course, US had the most, but the point here is that it attracted those that had been, in those places before. So if you're looking for a solution to connect with clients, look at the ones that have been in your city the last 12 months. They're the ones that are mostly going to be more anxious to return.
And it's funny, I want to also apply this to this group that's on this call. When I look at the connections that we've developed in a variety of cities all around the world, because we've had conferences actually in Australia and Canada and the US. Those have been the primary ones that we've been going to for the past 20 years. And, you know, Joel, I first met you through ILEA, Kevin Molesworth, who's on this call, Tracy Moran, Julia Rooney, like we all bonded and connected through ILEA Live or through the special event or through all these things in destinations. Where that person-to-person contact is so important. Now, we might reduce and not go as frequently. There might be more hybrid events, but I think it is the core of who we are and why we thrive and what we do.
I think you've all provided the answer. The answer is not in what we used to do at these things. The answer is in what we want to keep in the new things that come out of this. So everybody keeps talking about, yeah, it's going to be less about the content. And yeah, absolutely. Do you think about every boring conference session you had to snooze through in the darkened room with the monotonal presenter, the stuff you care a little bit about, but then you're working your way out the door 15 minutes later to go and hang out in the foyer space with your colleague to talk about their presentation that's coming up in 2 hours. That's the moment you're going to want. And all of this redundant, boring delivery, dry content's going to disappear. And those who put that out there won't have hybrid success, certainly. And they're going to see diminishing returns on their virtual events as well, because we're not going to put up with that in the virtual space in the future. We will now, while we deal with the symptoms of having to put the events on the way we are. But in the future, we're going to be very critical of that content delivery stuff. And hybrid's going to give us the chance to get our feet wet and learn how we're going to redesign events and experiences so that people get what they need out of them. Nothing more, nothing less.
Absolutely.
I was going to say, Anthony,
go ahead, Shannon. Shannon
do
first,
you
then Jenna.
think that everybody, obviously they'll be missing events a lot, and there is a large amount of people that do want to have in-person events, but there's certain costs and concerns with them. Do you think that that will give yourself and other event designers the space to create new types of events that will get rid of all the dry content that they're now aware is unnecessary?
I think a couple of things are going to happen. One, revenge recreation is not the same as going to a revenge conference. It doesn't have the same appeal, right? You know, yeah, I'm going to go on a vacation to the Maldives because it's beautiful and I can get away from it. That's super appealing, and I will take that risk a bit earlier on than I would attend the boring conference that's bored me for the last 5 years. So I think hopefully the other two scenarios are we start to really intentionally design the experiences at the events with more of this stuff in mind, that we are going to have to deal with attention spans. We're going to have to deal with people craving intimacy and personal connection around content and peer group learning and all of that good stuff that we think we want to keep. And those that do that are going to succeed. And those that don't embrace the new ways or experiment and try to go back to what we were, I think are going to fail over the medium term. And then they're going to be forced to transform as well, whatever that looks like.
Okay, Jenna had a question, and then Claire, your question is next. Michael, was that an answer to this before we proceed to a new question, or
just a comment on relating more to business travel and the corporate traveler? The content and the business purpose behind traveling or going to a conference is going to be stronger than ever, because now corporations realize, like, oh, you actually don't have to go to that conference to close that deal or to do your job. And so companies are like, oh, okay, no, if you really want to travel to a conference, you have to really show the ROI to me. And so as Anthony's saying, you know, what's the speakers, what's the content, what's the reason? Okay, you can go. And that'll be an ongoing, I think, influence for a couple of years now.
Yep. Value proposition.
Yeah.
Gemma, you had a question.
Yeah, it's a question for Michael. You mentioned like people come to Vancouver because there's lots of outdoor spaces and of course there's lots of recreational things to do. However, there tends to be a lack of outdoor spaces that event companies can use for public use, because I know a couple of years ago the Parks Board sort of officially closed to business for events, yet they allow BC Film. And I know this is a bit of an old conversation, but do you know that maybe this is the right time to put some pressure back on them changing their minds about that?
It is a good time, because the Parks Board did open up. They did it pretty quietly to corporate meetings again. So if you had a 50 meeting or less, you could apply for corporate or for-profit, as they were calling it, into the Parks Board. And hopefully that'll influence them to the future. And the city is realizing the impact of business events and live events into our economy. So I feel that the city of Vancouver is also going to be supportive. And when they do their new guidelines, which hopefully will come soon, they'll loosen them up. So it could be one thing that comes out of here, perhaps more park space for us, I hope.
Thanks, Michael. Claire, you had a question.
Just back to Anthony, I was just interested, now we are very much in the virtual space and not getting out of it anytime soon, what are the most successful or kind of exciting or interesting platforms you've been exposed to in the last few months?
So it's really been, I've noticed a lot of starting to hone in on their niche market. So the ones that need a high level of security and lockdown are really investing in the infrastructure around that. Like there's companies now you can go to and they can tell you exactly which data farm your content will live on down to the server if you need that level of guarantee that you know where that security level is. So especially for financial and medical tending towards that. Then other groups are investing a lot. You would have heard of Hop-In's investment that they have had. So they've really been focused, and they were around for about 12 months before the pandemic, but they've been focused on, okay, this is a really good quick adoption platform that a planner can have themselves and they can manage it, white label it, and rinse and repeat. A simple show with onboarding, everything in one space. Then you have other platforms that are doing integrated pieces. So you can grab an augmented reality piece and put it into your virtual event platform. You got Next Tech has done some interesting stuff, and they're going pretty big in Canada at the moment. And then we're starting to see a bit of a decline on the sort of skeuomorphic 3D space stuff. That you know, aside from, we all saw the Fortnite thing, and everybody's like, "Whoa, we're going to do everything in Fortnite from now on." But I'm seeing kind of the opposite happening in that conferencing world, where people are going more to the stripped down, simplified navigation, just to get you access to that content, and then focusing on, okay, how do I get the right number of people into the gallery window? They're asking those kinds of questions. How can I do the table conversations? So the platform that allows you to navigate and meet with people in an intimate video setting like this, where you can actually have face-to-face, are the ones that are doing the best. And the ones that can do that while the presentation's going on are doing really, really great. I can give you a whole list of the ones that can enable.
Yeah, I noticed in the chat, a couple of people mentioned Chime, a couple, I think Gemma, you mentioned Hoover. Did anyone else mention anything else that?
Trugo's good, InEvent's been good. I've checked that out a few times now. Cvent's getting better.
Great.
But yeah,
thanks for that.
As I said earlier, we're not going to know for another 6 to 12 months, because you're going to see it continue to blossom and grow, and there's going to continue to be an explosion. Then they're going to start imploding, and the cream will rise to the top, and it's going to be messy and scary. So I don't think it's going to get easier. It's going to be, the tech world is going to be even more confusing for the next 6 months at least.
Awesome. Anyone else with a question? And actually, Radima, I invite you, because I know we had, Radima and Steve, actually, we brainstormed a few questions prior to the call, and I think some of them have actually been asked, but if there's any of those that haven't been asked yet.
Well, I can pop in and ask one. So one of the questions, and I guess Anthony, Deborah particularly, can you speak to which segments of our industry might actually be thriving through the pandemic?
Come on, Deborah, kick it off.
Yeah, well, there is definitely going to be a lot of new and different ways that we're going to be able to look at this and to work with each other. But behind all of this change is definitely going to rely on the creative minds. But for now, the segments that have really been doing well through this pandemic, in particular, of course, technology, as Anthony would definitely mention, but the smaller properties have constantly been booked. and that's why it's great to see that Vancouver is going to be developing a lot of smaller properties, because that's kind of the new wave, because venues for live events are going to be elsewhere. It's not going to just be the ballroom. As a matter of fact, the Society of Landscaping Architects have now started to look at outdoor space. So I see live events happening more outdoors than indoors, especially now since we all have to wear our masks type of thing. I think the other segment that has really been thriving is Airbnb. I think Airbnb is constantly challenging themselves against our industry, and they're going to continue to grow in that area, especially, you know, against the hotels.
Interesting you should say that, because I used to have an Airbnb, and I've switched to long-term rentals because. So yeah. I'm actually curious. Can you tell me more about how Airbnb?
It depends on the usage. I mean, if you're, you know, down the street from a hotel, that's going to, or where that event's going to be, you're going to have to be competitive, no doubt. But Airbnb is coming up with features and strategies to compete. So I think interesting. Now that we're in this, you know, I mean, look at the hotels have been, and the convention centers have been, you know, turned into field hospitals. A lot of hotels have been servicing the homeless. So things are mixing up and changing, and Airbnb sees this. So they're working on that. So you might want to rethink that.
Right, right. Melanie, you mentioned small catering companies catering to special family dinners and smaller gatherings.
Yeah, she's definitely right. And I see that the smaller, you know, just like we went through a recession before, we're going to start with smaller meetings, and it's going to have to be built up. It's only the way, you know, because what's worked in the past is not going to work the way it's going to be today. I mean, it's completely different. So we have to constantly be on top of the economic performance, because that's what's going to dictate us and what we do in our businesses.
Great, thank you. Trish, I noticed you had a question. Do you want to come off mute and ask your question? Trish? Or would you like me to read it out for you? I can do that. So Trish's question was, yes, okay, no worries, Trish, no worries. Her question is, what type of interactive guest engagements or activations have you been seeing trending in the virtual realm? So Deborah, Anthony.
There's not a lot of new stuff trending, sadly, at the moment. What I have seen is a lot of smaller group conversation stuff being set up, so giving space for that in programming. And like we've been doing here, actually calling on the individual to ask the question, not just text-based. So bringing people to the stage, I really like those elements when people are willing to do it. And like I said, delivering content and then going into group discussions. More content, group discussion around it. So to enable that community feel and that peer group learning.
I see that, you know, I see the virtual side of it, like Anthony said, you know, is what everybody's been trying to get used to first. I think the engagement ideas are going to come more and more, but think about it. I mean, I have to admit, as a keynote speaker for many industries, I truly miss walking on stage, hearing the music, the applause, the happy faces. And now I'm in a room, and once in a while, my mom will come and visit and she'll give me a clap, or my dog will be laying underneath my feet. So I think a lot of people have really had to adjust to this first. And now the ideas of engagement are coming, you know, to the surface. But Sheriff Karamet, who is the CEO of PCMA, he says, we're not rushing to meet, we're rushing to educate. And so we're taking this time now to educate each and every one of us, but I guarantee you the engagement is going to be key for any successful event.
Hire a host, have a host, have some tunes.
If I can add in from a perspective of a sponsor.
Little things like that can bring a bit more, you know, applause.
Yeah, I'll take it.
But yeah, having an MC is a huge thing as well for engagement. And so few are doing it, and moderators who know what they're doing spend that money to get those dynamic faces to kick things off and to segue between things, and little video bumpers like they have on TV. There's a reason TV does the stuff they do, and they do it so well. So grab the good ideas that TV has, a little commercial at the start and the finish.
Right. And I think the key here is not just wait until the program has started. You can do things prior when people are at home, mailing them things, assigning them to have something available. I know one company, they actually had everybody do a pajama party. So everybody got in their onesies and everybody couldn't wait to get on camera to share what everybody was wearing. So, and there's, you know, people they're mailing their name badges, you know, maybe, you know, there's some engagement that it's involved. I think the key is getting them engaged before they get there, just like a live event. Get people excited about the program or the meeting before, or the live event beforehand.
Mm-hmm. Michael, I think you had something you were going to chime in with there.
As a sponsor, because we've been trying to engage clients globally or domestically, and we're finding if you can get into the content or speaking opportunity, it far outweighs the virtual trade show booth or just like a static trying to network with one person one-on-one. It seems to be kind of a trend coming out of all of this. You know, networking and virtual booths aren't working out, but get yourself into content. And it's one thing Tourism Vancouver we've been doing is doing a meditation moment. Very Vancouver. So going in and walking through a meditation moment with the whole group. It's been well received. Or cuisine in terms of cooking and recipes for Vancouver styles, and certainly getting into content. So it's kind of shifting, I think, the way that we're looking at virtual events.
But do you know why the virtual trade show booth doesn't work? Because we're trying to do the same thing we did at the live event with it. And the ecosystem, the platform doesn't allow for that kind of interaction. It's not natural. So we're gonna have to, if we want trade show booths to work, we're gonna have to reinvent what that experience is and redesign how people interact.
I think it gets into sponsorship, you know, because the trade show organizers, that's where they get their revenue from. So like, okay, Michael, we're gonna give you a trade show booth and it's gonna cost you $5,000. That's what we've always done. And now we're like, no. You know, I might give you that money if you give me content and speakers and other opportunities, but I'm not going to give it to you because you're going to give me a booth.
Right. Yeah.
So it's kind of hit from both sides.
I see Joel. I see you've got your hand up, but before that, I know Gemma had a question for Carla. So do you want to Gemma ask Carla and then Joel next?
Gemma, what are you asking for?
Hi. How are you, darling? You all right? That's not my question.
What are you alluding to? The last the TED virtual conference?
Yeah, basically TED's been doing really great things in the space that Anthony was talking about for years with regards to it's totally correcting my spelling in a wrong way, with regards to bumpers and interstitials and those little in-between moments that sort of refresh the attendee palette before the next dive into the next session. I mean, that's something that personally I know TED does really super well, and I just wonder if there's anything that you learned from your virtual conference this year that are good takeaways for the rest of this group. Sorry to volunteer you.
I think the takeaway was less is more. I mean, Ariella's on here too. Ariella Fong, she works at TED. So they kind of threw everything at it at TED Virtual over the 8 weeks, but then it got, I like what Michael had said around the sponsor, partnering with them, doing things with them. And then I attended C2 this year. I don't know if anybody here attended it. So they did a really nice job, and it was less is more for me. I just liked how they did the breakouts. So I think, and the brain dates and more intimate one-on-ones or gathering 6 people at a time. So that's what I have to say.
Thanks, Carla. Joel and then David.
Yeah, Joel. I just wanted to double click a bit more on what Anthony was talking about earlier in regards to there are all these virtual platforms popping up, as we can see, and there's also these add-ons being created and added on. What we've learned, at least within our team over the last 3-4 months of doing our new thing, which is augmented reality, is it is not meant to be used with everything you can think of. If anything, we've had some people come to us and say, can we do this? And we say, no, you can't, because you're actually interfering with your attendees' experience at that time. So I can't remember who said it, but the pre and post, right? Like, does it apply to pre and post event? Does it apply during the event? So it's funny because I love how Anthony's like, there's all this stuff happening all this stuff is going to implode. Yes, it will. And the best way that it's going to happen is we're all just going to go through it. We're going to experience, we're going to go through it. We're going to see how it happens. And that's how, I think, Anthony, you said, that's how the cream rises to the top.
But I think, you know, you hit on a very valuable point that we have to go about that exploration and that discovery with a design mindset. We have to be thinking what's happening before, during, and after the event, and warping time and timescales to understand our attendees' experiences further out than ever before. Like, you're probably going to be looking 12 months now for like around the event, if not years ahead. And so you're not going to be able to fully appraise and evaluate these solutions if you don't have really meaningful design goals from the event. What behaviors are we trying to change because of this event? Why are people attending, and how are we improving their world through the event experiences that we create? Then when we have really rich stuff there, then we can pick the platform.
Yeah, and to add to that, like even before we get to the experience of that event, like this community that we have around us. For example, what we have tonight, this is our testing ground, right? This is where we can go and get the advice and the focus groups and the are we doing this right? Like we're all kind of jumping into territories that we've never been in before. But I bet you anything, if I was to reach out to Gemma tomorrow and say, hey, have you done this? Like, what are your thoughts on this? You'd be giving me a very, very honest answer on whether we're going down the right path or not. And that's the stuff that we appreciate.
If every association event that I attended in 2021 crashed at some point, or the modules fell apart midway through, then I would actually renew my membership immediately at that point, because it means that they're experimenting hard enough that they
Interesting.
Going in safe and doing the bare minimum, I'm not interested.
Interesting. Great point. David Tikkanen, I know you had a question, and I also know that you didn't get the opportunity to introduce yourself at the beginning of this meeting. So please introduce yourself and ask your question.
Oh, no problem. Thanks, Eileen. David Tikkanen from MPI, so the current president of MPI BC. So thank you to ILEA for another awesome event. So I think that one thing that we've learned definitely through the pandemic is that, you know, I don't know if Sean's on the call tonight, but hashtag Stronger Together, that definitely we've learned that the three associations working together, you know, we're learning more and moving forward more quickly and dramatically this year than we probably have in the last 5 or 6 years combined. That's one thing that the pandemic certainly has done, is just kind of put everything on crack. So my sort of comment slash thing I'm kind of throwing out to people is, you know, if I take my own personal experience in 2020, and it's been a horrendous year, and I think we're all going to be, you know, looking forward to the end of 2020, moving into 2021, but I've probably attended more conferences and events in 2020 than I have in the last couple of years combined. And that's because the cost has been reduced so much. And so I'm gaining more education and through more event experiences, but I'm missing the huge social component, which is massive. And that's what drives us to go to live events. And that can't be replaced by online. And so I'm looking forward to being able to get on an airplane again, and to go to a conference, and to go to a lane cocktail reception and the coffee breaks and all that kind of stuff. And in my own world, as a teacher, what I've learned through the pandemic is we've had to learn how to deliver education through Zoom. And what we've learned, and now we're having discussions about, okay, so what does, you know, our program look like now post Zoom, like post COVID? How are we going to change back? And what have we learned from COVID? And one of the things that we've learned is that pure education, like a lecture, you know, quote unquote, is probably better delivered through Zoom than through a classroom, because the students are more focused, they're kind of staring at their screen, et cetera, in shorter bits. So when we do meet, actually we don't use Zoom, we're actually doing pre-recorded short, we call them nibbles and bits. So we're taking a traditional 2-hour lecture and reducing it to probably 40 minutes of recorded content on YouTube. Students consume that before coming to class. And when they come to class, it's a Zoom call and it's interactive. We're actually working with the material, more like Rahima would know this, it's more like a lab. So every lecture is becoming a lab, which is the more valuable part of the BCIT experience. And so I think with our conferences are going to have to look like that as well, because I want the social interaction piece, and I don't want to sit in a breakout room and listen to a speaker on a stage yak at me, where it's like, I could have been at home doing email, watching that presentation on Zoom at the same time. So I think our expectation is going to go up for meeting design post-COVID, because we're going to go like, hey, I could have done this through Zoom, right?
Yeah.
So it's going to put even more pressure on the event producer to produce even better experiences now, because the bar got raised, because, you know, it's just for pure knowledge content, Zoom works okay, but that's not why we go to conferences, you know? As Melanie talked about earlier, it's that human connection, which is, we're social animals. We need to connect with other people.
Great insights. Thank you so much, David. Gemma, if you can make it really, really quick, because I do want to give each panelist an opportunity to have their closing thoughts. And then I do want to make sure that we get everybody out of here by 7, and we have a few closing business things. So quick.
No, it's for Mel, and maybe Mel, you can put it in your wrap-up comments. I don't know. But it's really a question about mental health. And how this is going to affect humanity as a whole. Is there any indications of and how this is going to affect society afterwards? I know that there are a lot of mental health issues happening, and particularly, you know, teens and young adults and those who are on their own, who don't have anybody around. Are there any going to be long-term effects, and maybe specifically that we might need to be aware of as event organizers when we do start to do things again? So that's the question. Thanks, Mel.
Okay, as far as long-term events, yes, mental health is huge. I know my own patients, we've seen, I work with HIV positive patients, and we've seen that a lot of them who've struggled with drug addiction in their lives and been clean for years have, you know, gone back to using in this, and it's due to the social isolation, the lack of being able to go to a meeting or see people they would normally see who would support them in staying clean. And you know, that's not there. And so without those supports, people are kind of falling apart. And I think the same is happening with children. It happened with my own 12-year-old, you know, in the stay at home, it didn't go well, really needed the social interaction. And I think that may well affect children and teens as they go forward, because they've had such tight circles, they haven't been able to interact with as many people as they would have and forge those relationships they have going forward. I think that when it comes to going to events in the future, you know, I don't know about the rest of you, but if you watch a movie and there's a big gathering of people, it makes me go like this now. There's too many people. And so there may be increased anxiety about going to events with a lot of people. And it may take a while after, you know, COVID is gone before people kind of lose that. And we don't know if it's going to change at all. You know, there might be some of that kind of going forward.
Thanks, Melanie. 2 quick little things. Julia Rooney, is your next meeting not about mental health? Do you want to give it a quick plug?
Hey, sorry, I was just eating dinner, so I went off video. Yes, next Tuesday, November 24th, ILEA Calgary's collaborating with MPI Calgary, and our entire conversation is based around mental health, especially as we head into the holiday season here, because it's certainly going to be probably the hardest holiday season for most people. So if you can join us, that would be great. I can drop the link to register in the chat box.
That would be great. And again, just kudos to all of us for collaborating across chapters and across associations. This is pretty awesome. I want to do one last introduction before we move on to closing remarks, because Karine Kessel is on the call. And Karine, we did a whole bunch of introductions at the beginning and you weren't here yet, but Karine is our president-elect of ILEA International, and we did talk quite a bit about what ILEA International is doing. Are you able to just say a quick hello? Are you able to take I notice you're currently on mute and and I know Karine has 2 kids at home, so it's entirely possible that.
No, I was on site, so I just got home.
So welcome to the call. And we actually, you know, we have recorded it, so I'm hoping that we might be able to have some highlights shared at some point. But thank you so much for joining us. And definitely we did speak to a number of things on the international level. All right, closing remarks. Let's just go the same order that we did at the beginning. You guys can pass them over one to the other. And Radima, if you can highlight the speakers we'll start with Michael.
closeline is seeing all the innovative ways that people are modifying their meetings and events is so encouraging. And I think just our basic meeting is no longer being the same because now we have just so many new opportunities. Even when we just look at little things like the Mural Festival that's here in Vancouver, it's going to add an AR VR component to it, a whole new element. There's a men's choir that's reproduced a sound and light that'll be performance that's going to be at the Sheridan Wall Center that they've never done before. And then you look in Singapore and they have a new testing now where you're going to blow into a pipe and it'll give you an instant COVID test result. It's just fascinating to see how people like yourselves are innovating and changing. And that's, I think, it's going to stay with us for the future, and which gives us optimism that our industry is going to remain. We're just continually going to adapt.
Awesome. Thanks. Melanie.
I think those are great words, Michael. And I agree. I think that, in times when humanity is really tested is when we really rise to the challenge and we innovate and we change and we make life better. Right. And so as far as events going, there will be growth. So in the long term, there will be growth and there'll be changes and there'll be innovation and new things and things will be better. I think it's going to be a pretty dark winter. And we just kind of all have to buckle in and get through it by supporting each other. But I think there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Thanks, Melanie. Anthony.
Thank you, David. Your points about instructional design were great because I'm actually giving a presentation in 2 weeks about experience design for instructional designers. So you validated a couple of my points. I'm feeling better about my content. But I think that's going to be key that we going forward, we have more intention and purpose behind the experiences that we design and how they link to the instructional design that's always been part of our mandate. You're going to learn 3 letters going forward: LMS, learning management systems. They're going to be a big part. They've been a big part, but they've been poorly executed. And there's going to be a need for the events industry to interface with learning management systems in the future. So check out some of the ones that are out there and established. And if you're interested in getting into understanding some alternative principles of experience design in that instructional design realm, I recommend signing up, not just for the latest webinar that you heard about or the next platform demonstration, but sign up for some sort of educational course that's been doing it online, remotely, virtually, long before the pandemic. I just, in October, went through Seth Godin's Alt MBA program, which is, I think, about 7 years old now, maybe more. So really interesting to experience something that's been through many, many iterations up until the point that I got into cohort 43 or whatever I was. So
wow.
I highly recommend looking at that. Look for the history and see where they've taken it before you design your own, and everything by design.
Thanks, Anthony. Deborah.
Well, the one piece of advice that I would like to bring to the table comes from somebody that I follow very closely, and that's Jim Rohn. And he says, nothing changes unless you change. And I tell my audiences all the time, slow down to speed up. And I believe this is the time that we can take that opportunity to slow down and in order to speed up by re-strategizing our business plans or our business models and trying something new and different. Ever since leaving the hospitality hotel side of things, I've been a keynoter, but now I've restructured to try, virtual to a video podcast, which happened, Hospitality Today live was just going to be a side hustle until things came back, but it's been a huge success. So I'm going to continue to do it. And it's been a lot of fun because I have a lot of fun, dynamic conversations with people that work in the industry. And what better way than to stay in touch with my clients and the industry than to interview them, on a weekly basis. And to Michael's point earlier about, finding different creative ways and formats that other people are doing, take a look at Ticketmaster. Ticketmaster is trying to get the sports venues, the concert venues, up and running again. And what they're going to do once a vaccine comes into play, you're going to end up utilizing your smartphone more than anything, and including you won't be able to pass on a ticket because everything's going to be tested. Your smartphone is going to tell you if you've got you know, if you're negative or not. And then they're going to be paperless. I mean, there's so many different creative ideas out there. And I believe that we need to take a look at what other industries are doing as well as what we want to do. And then to Anthony's point, talking about taking online courses and trying something new. Well, we know that safety and security is here to stay with the hospitality industry. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So we also need to take on that responsibility as well, above and beyond just staying 6 feet apart or wearing our masks. I like Anthony's idea about an online course. Why not get your CPR certification? And you can do that online now. You don't have to go somewhere and, you know, do the whole little maneuvers. You can actually get it through the Red Cross or the American Heart Association. The CPR is huge, and we're going to need it because we're going to be dealing with, you know, people around us. You just never know if somebody's going to be choking on a piece of bacon during breakfast or something. So we want light events to come back. We need to treat it and be responsible for what is ahead for us. So I think that, you know, we have to change, and nothing's going to change unless you change.
Thanks so much, Deborah. And thank you to all the panelists. This has been an outstanding session, really thought-provoking. I really appreciate the engagement from everybody who is on the call, and it's been a delight. Now, don't go away because we do have a few more draws and things to finish up the evening. So I've seen a few things come up through Instagram, but the whole goal, we have until 1 o'clock tomorrow. What was your biggest takeaway from tonight? I encourage you to take some notes, do an Instagram story, or if you like an Instagram post, tag ILEA Vancouver, use the hashtag MyILEA. Let's see those on Instagram. And Claire and I will be doing an Insta Live at ILEA Vancouver tomorrow at 1 to draw the winner of a $25 gift certificate to Starbucks coffee, which is good anywhere that there's a Starbucks. So this is open to members, non-members, wherever you are in the world, panelists, everybody. Let's do some tweeting and, or sorry, some Insta. So the contest is only on Insta just because Claire can only really monitor the one channel, but by all means, if you prefer to tweet or share on Facebook or on LinkedIn, do that as well, because spreading the word, I mean, it's been very interesting and valuable, and it just helps everybody. Huge thank you to the ILEA Vancouver Board of Directors. This event was put on by a massively huge team. Radima and Steve really took the lead on all things programming related, but, you know, Claire and Zahida worked a lot to get the marketing and promotions out there, and, you know, everybody played their role, and we couldn't be doing what the chapter is doing without all you guys, so thank you so much. We are going to move on now. Radima is going to do the members only, so local, ILEA Vancouver local members draw. And when she does the draw, the lucky person will win your choice of tickets to either Bright Nights in Stanley Park or Festival of Lights. And Jillian will be the one to hook up with you to, because you have to actually book a specific time and a specific place. So it's a little bit more complicated than just giving you tickets. So Radima, who's the lucky winner? Thank you for the sound effects, Anthony.
We have Bouquet Donnelly. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Bouquet.
Thank you so much.
So Jillian and you will follow up to make arrangements for you to get those. So what's really funny is this whole topic is this whole event was forecast 2021, and we can't even forecast December. However, please save the date. So as you all know, Vancouver is famous for an award-winning industry holiday event. Every year it's been huge and massive and wonderful. And as you know, COVID has completely changed that this year. So the same team that was working in previous years has been working to come up with an alternative. There was a plan A. That fell through. There was a plan B. We are now in the position, and we keep, you know, wanting to announce what's going to happen, but they're still trying to figure out what can we and can't we do given the current situation, which is to be expected. So they're in the process of figuring out, does there need to be a plan C? As soon as we know, we will announce, but they have asked us to save the date. So December 15th will be something. And depending on, you know, what we are or aren't allowed to do in this province in December will determine what we can feasibly plan for. And I think we're going to have to, you know, within the coming week, I think the team will make an announcement. And of course, David, you and I and Sean will be notified as to what the next steps are going to be. So we will see you somehow on the 15th of December. I'm going to stop the recording and stop sharing my screen, but everybody is free to just hang out and chat. But the official meeting is now adjourned. Thanks you all so much for coming.